When a little boy, identical to my lost son, asks if Dad became rich because of me, revealed. Mike pushed the rickety wheelchair along the park path, the gentle summer sun filtering through the branches, casting flickering shadows on the ground. His father sat stooped, mumbling fragments of forgotten words, a reflection of the decay that seeped into their lives. Mike's heart ached as he caught sight of a little boy playing nearby. The child, with his tousled brown hair and bright laughter, was a mirror image of Ethan. The resemblance tightened Mike's throat as grief washed over him like a relentless tide. Lost in the memories, he heard the boy's innocent voice break through the fog. "Did your dad become rich because of you?" The question struck Mike like a lightning bolt, electrifying the grief that dwelled in him. He managed a strained smile, but his pulse raced. The contrast between Sammy's bright innocence and the hollow ache left by Ethan felt unbearable. Was this little boy merely a catalyst, forcing Mike to confront the jagged edges of his sorrow? Mike hesitated, caught in a quagmire of longing and regret. Searching for a reply, doubt spiraled in his mind. Could he ever reclaim that joy? Guilt flared within him as he thought of the laughter he had once shared with Ethan, now a dim echo of what could have been. Was it possible to nurture that same love for Sammy while honoring the ghost of his son? The idea of letting someone else into that space felt treacherous, as if he were betraying Ethan's memory. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he pushed the wheelchair forward, the surrounding laughter faded into the background, replaced by a deafening silence filled with doubts. He thought of the children's book hidden away, a testament to Ethan's vibrant spirit, a treasure that lay untouched in the remnants of grief. Perhaps it was time to face the world beyond these park gates, to breathe life into the characters Ethan had created. But how? Would those who had once known him ridicule him for dreaming, for pursuing something so fragile amidst chaos? Mike's heart clenched painfully as shadows of despair loomed larger. The thought of judgment stung. His neighbors would scoff. They had always seen him as a factory worker, a father to the perfect son, reduced now to fragments of a life half-lived. Could he rise against the tide of indifference? The yearning to transform that book into a reality pulsed through him, igniting a flame of determination. Yet with every flicker of hope, it brought a fresh wave of guilt. As he glanced back at Sammy, joy radiating from the child, a lump formed in his throat. Mike yearned to break free from the shackles of suffocating loss. Somewhere deep down, a question echoed louder and clearer than the rest. Could he weave something meaningful from the threads of his grief, or would he forever be haunted by shadows he couldn't escape? Just as he began inching toward an answer, his father's voice broke the moment. "Ethan," the old man murmured, pulling Mike back into the depths of his torment. With a heaviness in his chest, Mike stood at a precipice. How could he embrace hope when his past loomed like a specter, threatening to knock him down? Would he defy the dark forces of doubt, or would he allow despair to claim him? Mike felt an urgent need to break free from the past, while holding tight to the essence of his son. The hands of time seemed cruel as they pressed him under layers of grief. The once clear road ahead was a murky fog, and with every step he took, the weight of expectations and memories came crashing down upon him. He glanced at the boy now darting across the field, his laughter ringing joyfully. The two worlds, one filled with laughter, one soaked in sorrow, could not be reconciled in his mind. The wheelchair jolted against a small bump in the path. His father looked up, confusion etched on his face, as if trying to recall a moment or a memory that remained just out of reach. Mike stopped to steady the chair, a wave of frustration coursing through him. Why was he unable to articulate this twisted blend of longing and desire to move forward? The burden of others' expectations settled heavily on his shoulders. What kind of man was he if he couldn't rise above the past? His gaze drifted to a nearby tree, its gnarled branches reaching outward, struggling against the wind. That tree was a reflection of his own state, rooted to the ground yet yearning to expand, longing to touch the sky, but bound by memories that caused it to wilt. It was in moments like this that clarity often flickered, like the brief glint of sunlight through dark clouds. Maybe pursuing the children's book was his next step. What if he channeled his heartache and lessons learned into those pages? Those characters could live on, telling stories imbued with humor, love, and resilience. In that moment of distraction, a spark ignited, the thought that writing might not just be a tribute, but a form of catharsis. Who would bestow judgment? He had already lost so much. Surely he could do this for himself, to prove that he was more than his grief. Yet, doubt clawed at him, whispering cruel reminders. Who would want to read the stories of a man brought to his knees? What if all he birthed was a hollow echo? The struggle was palpable, while determination flickered at the edges, anxiety gnawed away at the core. It was this very fear that had held him back, but what if now was the time to transform that fear into motivation? A sudden movement caught his eye. The boy he had seen earlier now stood at a distance, hands on his hips, a determined look etched on his face. Was he facing an imaginary foe? Or perhaps, like Mike, was he confronting his own battles? It occurred to Mike that children often had an unfiltered grasp of reality, bare of adult constraints. If he too approached life with naive bravery, what might he unlock within himself? The path began to feel tinged with opportunity rather than entrapment. He could transform his grief into fuel, turning agony into art. The thought was intoxicating but terrifying. Fully embraced, an invitation to confront the past while also letting it breathe and fade. Taking a deep breath, Mike clenched his fists around the wheelchair handles. "Dad, let's go home," he said, a new conviction underpinning his voice. He now had a destination, not only to return to routine, but to plunge into the world of creation. Feeling the wheel turn beneath his grasp felt symbolic, as the wheels of his own life were beginning to turn again. However, as he navigated the narrow path leading back to the parking lot, a shadow of uncertainty lingered. The real test lay ahead. Could he truly overcome the whispers of doubt that reared like shadows every time he attempted to step into light? With every push of the wheelchair, he felt closer to a decision that would change the trajectory of his future. What lay ahead was both promising and foreboding, a threshold awaiting his final commitment. As they neared the exit of the park, the words formed silently in his mind, primed for expression, ready to be laid bare for the world. The moment had arrived, but his resolve trembled. Would he dare to confront not just the blank pages ahead, but the depths of his own heart, opening it for a new narrative to unfold? As they rolled down the last stretch of the path, Mike's thoughts whirled within him, like leaves caught in a gust of wind. His father's presence was a comfort and a reminder of the heavy burdens he carried. Each turn of the wheelchair wheels echoed his internal conflict. A desire to create tangibly battled against the insistent whispers of self-doubt. The sun shone brightly now, illuminating patches of grass as they emerged from the park. Yet, the brightness felt intrusive, mocking him with its cheeriness. What if he poured out everything into his writing, only for it to be dismissed? What if he exposed his soul on each page, putting forth not just a story, but a fragmented reflection of a father wrestling with grief? As they arrived at the car, the boy from earlier reappeared, running up to them with that same spirited determination. His face was flushed with excitement. "Are you going to be a writer like in the stories?" he asked, genuine curiosity sparkling in his eyes. The question pierced through Mike's defenses. It was both innocent and profound, offering either a beacon of hope or a harbinger of vulnerability. I think so," Mike hesitated, taken aback by the gravity of the boy's inquiry. In that brief exchange, something clicked. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here was a boy, full of possibility and imagination, standing before a man who feared the very same aspirations. "Do you think I can?" Mike's voice was softer, searching for validation even from this little stranger. The boy nodded vigorously. "Yeah, you can do anything if you try." How simple to him. It cut through the layers of judgment and doubt, laying bare a truth he'd hidden from himself. Wasn't that the essence of childhood? Unwavering belief in dreams and the possibility of magic? Those childlike convictions could serve as a lifeline in his own turbulent sea. Mike patted the boy's head in gratitude, suddenly filled with determination. "All right, let's get moving," he said to his father as he assisted him into the passenger seat. As he secured the wheelchair and climbed into the driver's side, he felt a shift within him. How often had he let doubts drown out the wild potential present in his heart? Once they were driving, he risked a glance at his father. "Dad, can we talk? About stories?" The elder's face had grown weary, but it also sparkled with a flicker of recognition. Mike could see the glimmers of his own youth reflected back at him, a man once eager to chase dreams now confined in the weight of years. "We used to talk about writing all the time," Mike recalled aloud, the memories piquing his father's interest. "Do you remember how you used to encourage me to create worlds in my mind?" With every word, Mike felt the barriers between his grief and creative aspirational thinning. As he navigated traffic, he shaped their conversation into one filled with possibility, blending nostalgia with a budding excitement. They shared their thoughts on characters and plots, and for the first time in a long while, he saw his father lean forward, the confusion in his eyes transformed into curiosity. For Mike, clarity dawned as he embraced the fact that his fears existed only in the shadows. He wasn't just writing to capture memories. He was creating space for healing, for exposure, for new beginnings. In the culmination of his resolve, doubt transformed into potential alchemical energy bubbling beneath the surface. The journey pressed on as thoughts swirled about how to structure the story that would intertwine his grief and the lessons his son's laughter taught him. But the exhilaration was laced with apprehension. When would the perfect moment arrive to put pen to paper? Then, unexpectedly, his phone buzzed. It was an email. A small literary magazine he'd submitted a short piece to a while ago. The subject line alone sent a jolt of panic into his chest. Submission accepted. Mike's heart raced. The weight of the world collided with exhilaration. Could this be the validation he needed? Or was it merely another chance to be judged? His breathing quickened as he clicked it open, the world around him fading into a blur of uncertainty and excitement. Would the acceptance cheer him on or deepen his vulnerability? As the words unfolded on the screen, one thought gripped him tightly. The road laid before him, riddled with the shadows of the past, seemed more illuminated than before. On the brink of confronting not only the story of others but his own echoing silence, he wrestled with a new realization. Was he prepared for the realities of what lay ahead? Not just in his writing, but in the very essence of his identity? The email was just the beginning. Time would reveal the momentum of this next chapter, testing Mike in ways he had never anticipated. With the weight of his thoughts pressing in, the moment of truth loomed closer, urging him toward that cliff from which he would either gracefully leap or crash down into a cacophony of unanswered questions. The call to write was a magnet pulling him forward, but in that moment of uncertainty, a deeper question emerged. Would he allow himself to truly reflect the love, loss, and hope in each word? Mike's fingers trembled over the steering wheel. The next step would define him. What lay ahead was not just an acceptance, but the weight of his own expectations, ready to be transformed into something tangible. Would he rise to meet it? The car hummed softly as Mike merged into the flowing traffic, his father resting against the seat, eyes closed, seemingly lost in thought. While the rhythmic sound of the engine provided a soothing backdrop, Mike's mind raced with uncertainty and spiraling ambition. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the rearview mirror, an image all too familiar, yet alien. This man, the man in the mirror, was on the brink of something. An acceptance email marked the threshold of a new endeavor, a desire that had long lain dormant beneath layers of grief and self-doubt. The moment hung heavily in the air, demanding attention. What if the boy was right? What if trying wasn't just about risking failure, but rather embracing the thrill of creation? He realized he had spent years buried under his own expectations, never daring to confront what might blossom if he simply allowed himself the space to write authentically. Anger and sadness swirled within him, but so did the flicker of resolve ignited by that boy's unwavering belief. "Dad," he began hesitantly, breaking the silence that lingered like an echo. "About stories. What if I wrote one about us?" His father's eyes opened slowly, an awakening mirrored by a glimmering curiosity in his gaze. "What do you mean?" he asked, the weary lines of his face momentarily softening as an ember of interest sparked to life. "I'm thinking about capturing our journey, the grief, the laughter, everything." The words spilled out, fueled by a sudden rush of inspiration. "I don't want to write just for validation. I want to write to connect, to heal." His father's brow furrowed slightly. "You think that's enough? Will anyone care about our story?" The question pricked at Mike's heart. The weight of possibility filled the confines of the car, teetering between a son searching for meaning and a father who questioned his relevance. "It's not just our story, Dad," he replied, tasting the words carefully. "It's about recognizing the beauty amid loss, the struggles that other people face too." Mike's heart raced, and he felt the impact of his own assertions. Was he ready to peel back the layers of his own experiences and lay them bare for judgment? How could he reconcile the desire to share while fearing the ridicule that often shadowed honesty? "Maybe that's the point," his father murmured, and Mike could see light shining through the cracks of his uncertainty. "If you're honest, if you write from a place of truth, then it can resonate, if you let it." As they drove, Mike's thoughts swirled with the dizzying weight of that possibility. The car made its way through neighborhoods and familiar streets, but everything felt different, newly infused with meaning. Every house they passed seemed alive with stories, joy, sorrow, and everything in between, intertwining like threads in a grand tapestry. Would he be brave enough to unravel his own threads and weave them into something beautiful? The thought terrified him, but it was also exhilarating. Writing gives us the power to confront, to accept, yes, even to change the narrative, he continued, determination seeping into every word. "If I commit to this, I'll shape not just my acceptance, but the legacies we choose to create." With such clarity, Mike felt the chains of his self-doubt begin to rattle. Allowing each moment of vulnerability to take form as ink on paper was not an act of weakness, it was a declaration. His writing could become a vessel, carrying the burdens he had been too afraid to share. As his father nodded thoughtfully, Mike seized the moment. "Will you help me? We can brainstorm ideas together, watch characters come alive. I want you with me in this." The elder's expression softened, and a rare smile flickered across his face. "Of course. It would take both of us, wouldn't it?" Though a burgeoning excitement mingled with his lingering fears, Mike felt a tangible shift in his perspective. The path ahead felt less daunting, the shadows of his mind less oppressive. What if his story, their story, could interlace not just grief, but renewal? But as elation surged through him, another thought tethered at his consciousness. The weight of honesty carried risk. What would happen if he unveiled the depths of his despair, the insecurities that kept him hesitant? Would this journey shatter the remnants of his composure? And, even more profoundly, if he confronted what lay within, would it lead to revelations he wasn't prepared to face? With each mile they traveled, the thrill of creation battled his trepidation, pushing at the edges of his resolve. As they reached their destination, the conversation faded, but the questions roared louder inside Mike's mind. The precipice of his journey was no longer fear of rejection, but an exploration of the truths he buried deep. What awaited him on the other side of his writing? The tension surged as he imagined what stories would spring forth from his heart, and how they would ultimately define him. The moment of reckoning was near. Would he grapple with the shadows of the past and step into the light of clarity? The next chapter awaited his singular voice, and as he took a deep breath, Mike sensed that the real act of writing had yet to begin. In the days that followed, Mike found himself enveloped in an unsettling mix of anticipation and dread. The first task loomed, transforming his chaotic thoughts into structured words. Intent on maintaining momentum, he crafted a daily writing routine, carving out hours in the morning before the world stirred. Sunrise became his companion, illuminating blank pages that begged for solace. Each morning, he sank into the rhythm of the keyboard, tapping out fragments of his mind with determination. Yet each keystroke felt like navigating a minefield. Memories bubbled to the surface, images of laughter, hardship, and moments of silence shared with his father. Would they be as impactful written down as they were etched in his heart? Would vulnerability breed connection or expose him to ridicule? That question gnawed at him relentlessly. Would anyone care? The shadows of doubt loomed larger than ever as he hesitated over the word Dad. It should evoke warmth, but instead it felt like a weight on his chest. The essence of their relationship was a mix of unspoken joys and burdens carried silently, threading together through every difficult moment. As he ruminated on this, Mike ventured into conversations with his father, asking him questions that demanded honest responses. One evening, they sat together in the living room, old photographs spread across the coffee table. Each image told a part of their shared history, a tapestry woven from joy splintered into grief. "Why didn't we talk about these things back then?" Mike asked, flipping through snapshots of birthday cakes and holiday gatherings. His father's eyes clouded with memories. "When you're in the thick of it, sometimes you just want to soldier through," he replied, his voice low. "I thought shielding you from the weight of it all would help. I didn't realize it was just as heavy for you." Mike pondered this, mourning the moments they could have shared had they embraced the vulnerability sooner. Their bonding experiences, while still cherished, now disclosed the layers of misunderstanding that often divided them. In this emotional excavation, a hidden truth emerged. It was time for him to confront his own reluctance. Instead of merely documenting their journey, he needed to portray the less flattering moments. Would they dip into the struggles, the raw essence of their reality? Would his father's silences transform into genuine dialogue within the pages? Writing one morning felt cathartic, as Mike wrestled with an uncomfortable truth. He had used his mother's passing as a crutch, hiding behind a facade of sorrow while stifling his ambitions. The real challenge lay in exposing the pain woven through loneliness, the disconnect he felt that ultimately led him away from his passion. But then came a new revelation, a flicker of empowerment. How he viewed his vulnerabilities in writing could reshape his relationship with his father and himself. What if he could write not only about the past burdens, but also forge a path forward, crafting narratives that celebrated growth and possibility? Each keystroke, each word, felt like an act of defiance against his self-doubt. Despite the progress, anxiety remained a constant companion. He knew he was staging a confrontation, a mental duel with himself. Would he truly be able to expose the unvarnished truth without the fear of losing control? And then there was the boy, the haunting presence of the small voice that told Mike to be brave, that the journey mattered. With every written line, Mike felt that voice grow stronger, pushing against tides of uncertainty. Perhaps writing was not just his personal healing, but a bridge to connect to others who longed for similar understanding and acceptance. As he moved forward, the glowing screen before him became a battleground of emotion, and he realized that the scope of his potential lay not just in words, but in the profound connections he could cultivate. The quest for honesty transformed into an exhilarating exploration of self-discovery. But with that exhilarating pursuit came an unsettling realization. Opening the door to vulnerability meant he could unleash not only healing narratives, but painful truths that sliced deeper than he anticipated. Would he find the strength to wield those truths and embark on this literary journey? Or would the shadows of his past push him back into the recesses of complacency? Mike took a deep breath and stared at his blinking cursor, aware that this was only the beginning of a narrative he was both scared and excited to write. The pulse of the story thrummed with tension as he considered the next pivotal act, confronting the deepest facets of loss and learning to navigate those currents. Could he step fully into the light of authenticity? Or would he hesitate at the threshold of revelation? As he typed the words, "Our story," doubt entwined with resolve, ushering him further into the unknown. What awaited him in those uncharted waters? Days turned into weeks, and the tension of Mike's writing journey settled deeper into his skin. Each morning he pored over the keyboard, navigating through the complexities of sentiment and silence. But clarity changed him. Knowing he was at a pivotal moment made his fingers hover over the keys, torn between revealing and concealing. He began to write about moments that pierced his heart the most, the instances when he felt most lost, years spent in the shadows of his own fear of vulnerability. As he typed the scenes of regret, painstakingly recalling missed opportunities for connection with his father, he started to understand his own motivations for avoiding those difficult conversations. But now he could apply that knowledge to move past them. Yet, even as he felt the urge to share, an unsettling backdrop loomed. What if articulating those experiences brought only pain, both to him and his father? What if unveiling those truths shifted the dynamics of their relationship beyond repair? Such thoughts paralyzed him, transforming his morning routine into a monumental struggle against indecision and fear. One morning, after a particularly sleepless night haunted by visions of his younger self and the conversations that could have been, he made a choice. For the first time, he decided to ditch the facade of polish and eloquence that had shackled his narrative. Instead, he would embrace the raw, unedited version of himself. He set the timer for 10 minutes and began to write without pause, allowing no space for self-censorship. The result was a torrent of emotion spilling across the page. Fragments of anger, sadness, and finally, that glimmer of hope he feared would never emerge. He wrote about the pain from not discussing his mother's illness, the isolation it created, and how it led him to places he never intended to go. In that moment, as the tears blurred his vision, something shifted inside him. The release felt liberating but also terrifying. Once he allowed himself to bear the truth about his family dynamics, he saw things differently. He was not just unearthing old wounds, but finding pathways toward healing. Each word opened the door to him, finally grappling with how he viewed his parents' joint struggles, and how his choices had been influenced by their complex relationship. In confronting his past, he also acknowledged how it perpetuated a loop of silence in their exchanges. The more he wrote, the more he realized that these unflattering memories could serve a purpose. Perhaps sharing them would help others not feel so alone. Perhaps they could even become a way to bridge the gap with his father. But the hardest part loomed ahead, sharing these words with the man who had been both his anchor and an intimidating figure of silence. His father often withdrew into himself, guarding emotions as tightly as a fortress, and to challenge that silence would mean risking rejection. The thought was daunting, making Mike's heart race. Would he be a disappointment to his father, revealing vulnerabilities that he had always masked? The ever-present fear of judgment threatened to stall his progress. Emboldened by the catharsis of writing, he decided it was time to create a plan. After weeks of brave scribblings, Mike felt a surge of boldness. He would invite his father to read a portion of what he had drafted, a piece centered around his thoughts about loss, honesty, and redefining the contours of their relationship. It was a risk, but the potential for a deeper bond felt more appealing than the chains of silence. With trembling hands, he selected a passage that communicated both the strife and his yearning for understanding, hoping it would resonate. This piece would mark a turning point, propelling him to pursue the difficult dialogue that could mend years of unspoken tension. The prospect frightened him, but beneath that fear roared a primal instinct to connect. As he sent a quick message to his father, asking if they could talk, the weight of what he was about to undertake settled upon him. Was he truly ready to confront the realities of their relationship? The anxiety twisted his stomach, yet it also ignited a flicker of anticipation within him. In that single moment, everything rested on the cusp of significant change. Mike took a deep breath, hoping that this conversation could lead him to deeper revelations about both himself and the father he had so long wished to understand. Would this brave act of honesty unlock the doors to profound mutual understanding? Or would it drudge up hidden resentments that would keep them apart? As he waited for his father's response, a sense of urgency pulsed through him. The next step in his journey awaited, rich with the promise of new discoveries and uncharted emotional landscapes. Mike's phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the thick silence that enveloped him. He stared at the screen, pulse quickening as the message bubbled to the surface. "Let's talk," it read simply, and its brevity felt like a chasm of expectation. In that moment, he was suspended between anticipation and fear, weighing the gravity of what was about to unfold. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen as doubt threatened to perforate his courage. His father had often viewed vulnerability as a weakness, a dangerous flaw to be shunned. Did Mike have the strength to push against that barrier? The fear of opening old wounds soon paled in comparison to the growing realization that his silence over the years had suffocated his own growth. He took a breath, steeling himself, and responded with a time and place. The hours that followed felt like an eternity as Mike rehearsed the conversation in his mind. Every possible outcome spiraled into a whirlwind of doubt. Would they connect, or would this dissolve into another failure to communicate? Self-criticism bubbled to the forefront. What if he choked on his words, stumbling through his prepared lines? What if his father dismissed him outright? As he arrived at the cafe, a gathering of thoughts and worries churned within him. The familiar scent of brewed coffee mingled with the tension in his chest, and he took a moment to collect himself, reminding himself of the objective: to create, at long last, an opportunity for dialogue. The clinks of cups and the warmth of muted conversations enveloped him as he scanned the room, spotting his father seated at a corner table. When their eyes met, a jolt of both recognition and anxiety coursed through Mike. His father had aged, his face mapping years of stoicism and restrained emotion, and for a moment, Mike felt small again, like the anxious boy yearning for his father's approval. Was the boy within him still waiting to be seen? This was more than just a moment to share. It was an invitation to be understood. Slowly, he sat down, his heart pounding. "Thanks for coming," Mike began, fighting to keep his voice steady. His father nodded, only slightly, eyes betraying a glimmer of concern beneath the reserved exterior he had perfected over decades. "I want to share something with you," Mike stammered, his throat tightening around the words he had rehearsed. He pulled out the letter, the passage he had carefully selected. This was it, the moment of truth. As he read, Mike felt the weight of his past conversations pressing down, each word a breadcrumb leading him back to the moments of silence that had shaped their bond. He spoke about his mother, the lost connections, and the longing to be seen. With every word, he felt himself shedding layers of apprehension, revealing the rawness that had often been tucked away. But as he finished reading, he caught his father's eye, searching for a flicker of acknowledgement. Instead, a heavy silence blanketed them. Was this disappointment lingering in the space between? The air thickened as Mike's heart sank, a collision of hope and dread. Did he just jeopardize the fragile connection they had? Then his father spoke, tentative but determined. "I didn't know you felt this way." Each syllable cracked open the fortified walls he had built around his own silence. It was a moment ripe with potential. Mike's breath caught, the reprise of vulnerability echoing between them. He realized this was not just about revealing his story, but stepping into his father's as well, a past filled with burdens neither had discussed. "Do you ever think about how we could change our dynamic?" Mike asked, the tremor of hope filtering through his voice. Would this create a bridge he desired or force them into deeper chasms of misunderstanding? The challenge was now laid bare before them, and as he watched his father take a slow breath, Mike felt a rush of anticipation. The jagged edge of doubt had been replaced by a ghost of possibility. What would his father say next? Would he reflect, or would he retreat once more into silence? As they sat there, the weight of experiences unshared hung in the air, anticipation swirling like the heat rising from their cups. In that moment, one question loomed larger than all others. Could they both summon the courage to redefine their relationship? Or would the silence of the past continue to cast shadows on their future? Mike watched his father's face, every micro-expression a heartbeat in the stillness that enveloped their table. The cafe that buzzed with chatter and laughter felt worlds away, as if timelines had collapsed into this single moment of emotional reckoning. The challenge he posed hung like a thread above them, a fragile connection waiting to be tested. His father's brow furrowed, the flickering shadows of contemplation weaving across his features. Mike's pulse quickened with the anticipation of a response. Would it be a gentle push towards dialogue, or a retreat to familiar stonewalling? The weight of those years of silence pressed heavier than the coffee cups before them, demanding either reparation or a painful continuation of their isolation. "I've never thought about it that way," his father began, voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "You mean, like, us talking openly about things?" "Yes," Mike replied, his voice coming out steadier than he expected. "I mean, we've always tiptoed around the big stuff. I'm tired of being stuck in this pattern." The conviction in his words surprised even him. There it was, to name it, to claim it. His father's gaze shifted away, as if turning inward, navigating the memories that lurked just beneath the surface. "What do you suggest?" There was a challenge laced in those words, an unspoken invitation to push further. The confrontation that Mike had dreaded now drew nearer in all its potential to fracture or heal. He thought back to moments he had steeled himself for, the conversations he wished could have happened when he was younger, moments of connection he had fantasized about. What if we just start by sharing more about our lives, without judgment? I can't pretend anymore that everything's fine when it's not. Mike could feel the air crackle with tension as he followed the thread of vulnerability he had just spun. Could his father bear to unfold himself? Or would he retreat, put up walls as he had for years? What had once felt like an insurmountable mountain now seemed like an uncharted road. A sense of empowerment washed over Mike, emboldening him to continue. "I remember how you always worked late, and how it felt like, I don't know, like you were trying to provide for me, but I needed you here." His father clenched his jaw, the tension evident in his posture. "I worked hard. You and your mother deserved more than I had." There was a starkness to his expression that hinted at deeper wounds. "Yes, I appreciate that," Mike countered gently. "But what good is success if we can't share it together? I want to know you beyond just the titles, beyond father and provider. I want to learn about your dreams, your fears." A moment passed, the stillness heavy and full of potential. Mike felt himself teetering on the precipice of something monumental, the realization that perhaps his father had his own silenced narratives too. "Dreams?" his father muttered, almost humorlessly. "Those disappeared a long time ago." The phrase hung in the air, a chilling revelation that cracked open another avenue of discussion. A part of Mike swelled with the instinct to press further, to explore the hidden landscapes of regret and aspiration they both shared. Would this lead to understanding or pure discomfort? "What if we could find them again?" Mike asked boldly, his voice barely above a whisper. His father met his gaze, a glimmer of something, curiosity perhaps, dancing in his eyes. "You really think we can?" "Yes," Mike said, conviction washing through him, "but we have to be open about what we've buried, all the things we've kept locked up." As the conversation offered a glimmer of hope, Mike's heart raced with both trepidation and determination. Could they really dismantle the fortress of silence that had kept them apart for so long? And then, just as his father seemed on the verge of sharing, he hesitated. "What about the past, Mike? Can we truly let that go?" Now, with determination flaring, Mike understood that this was not only about facing his father. It was a test of his own resolve to confront the echoes of his own childhood fears. Could he forgive the past while risking rejection in the present? In a world where silence had so long been the dominant language, Mike felt the weight of an impending decision that shifted everything. For both of them, it was a choice that would open the door to the possibility of healing, or send them spiraling back into the abyss of their unspoken narratives. What happened next hung delicately in balance, a tested bond amidst a sea of unresolved emotions, a precarious negotiation of their identities. Would they break free from the patterns of silence, or would the shadows of their histories loom even larger? The answer lingered just out of reach, like a question they both feared but needed to ask. Mike held his breath, waiting for his father's reply to settle into the air around them. The cafe continued its dance of chatter and clinking cups, oblivious to the monumental exchange unfolding at their corner table. The adrenaline coursed through him, but it was quickly overshadowed by a creeping sense of dread. Had he pushed too far? He studied his father's face, searching for some flicker of realization, or maybe recognition. What lay beneath that stoic exterior? Regret? Disappointment? There was an intensity in his father's silence, one that spoke volumes yet revealed nothing. "How do we even start?" his father finally replied, voice wavering, an echo of the walls they'd built over the years. The question hung there, heavy and inviting, like an unlocked door holding the promise of freedom. "We could share moments," Mike suggested, his mind racing with possibilities. "Why not tell me about the dreams you never got to chase? I mean, what bring you joy?" His father paused, muscles tightening visibly, and in that moment, Mike sensed the walls around him beginning to soften, if only slightly. "Joy?" his father echoed, but it sounded more like a challenge than an inquiry, as if daring Mike to uncover something buried deep. "I didn't prepare for joy. I prepared for survival." In that stark admission, Mike felt the chilling reality of years of undisclosed pain wash over him. His thoughts exploded into questions, pushing boundaries he'd only dared to poke at before. "You didn't allow yourself to dream?" Mike asked gently, a probing nudge. His father glanced down, the coffee stirring slowly with tension more palpable than the liquid itself. "Dreams are luxuries for those who don't wrestle with reality. I've got bills, responsibilities." There was a finality to his words, an attempt to shut down any further exploration. Yet from somewhere deep within, Mike found the fortitude to continue. "But what if we're not defined solely by our burdens? What if we could create new dreams? Together?" He could feel the weight of history behind each word, his own longing for connection evident in his tone. "It's not that simple," his father replied, the frustration evident. "Life doesn't work that way." Mike fought to restrain his rising exasperation, knowing this moment could lead them both toward growth or further isolation. "You're right, it's not simple, but we can choose to teach each other. I don't want to understand you solely through the lens of what you provided. Choose." His father's voice trailed off, staring into the depths of his cold cup as if hoping the answer would materialize at the bottom. "Yeah," Mike pressed on, sensing an opening. "Choose to rebuild something. If it takes one conversation at a time, one shared dream at a time, isn't it worth it?" His pulse quickened. He could see the chinks in his father's armor beginning to appear. "Maybe," his father muttered. "But what if neither of us knows how to dream anymore?" Silence returned, thick and suffocating, amplifying the unspoken fears looming in the space between them. For the first time, Mike seriously contemplated the possibility that retraining their thoughts would take time, effort, and perhaps even failure to comprehend how to rekindle those flickering ambitions. Yet he felt a rising sense of hope, a beacon glimmering stubbornly against the dark clouds of self-doubt. "Let's try. I'm willing to explore it together." He spoke the words almost as a vow. "Explore?" His father didn't meet Mike's gaze at first, but something shifted in his brow, a questioning attitude now embedded in the ambivalence. "You think we'll make it out of all this?" "I believe we can," Mike said more forcefully, grounding himself in that belief. "You have a life beyond what the world sees. I know there's more to you. Let's work to uncover it." His father held his gaze for a moment longer, this time searching for conviction amid a pained uncertainty. Mike felt like he was holding an entire universe in his palms, waiting to see if it would collapse or expand. Then, just as the moment felt ready to shift, heavy footsteps approached their table, pulling the electricity out of the air. Mike's heart dropped as a stranger, a small boy with an uncanny resemblance to him, stopped short before them, looking at his father with innocent curiosity. "Excuse me, mister? Did you become rich because of your son?" The child's words cut into the fragile fabric of the moment, an innocent question that sent shockwaves through Mike's chest, pushing him to confront the very essence of identity and legacy. Mike's father's face hardened. "That's not—" "Why not?" Mike interrupted, unable to hold back. The time had come to face the deeper echoes of their relationship head-on and unearth the possibility of a shared future. As the words left his mouth, he wondered if he had just ignited the spark they needed or blundered into a powder keg of buried resentment. Would his father rise to the dialogue or close off once more? The reality of their tumultuous journey loomed ahead, and he was ready to venture into the unknown. In the lingering silence following the boy's innocent question, Mike's heart raced with a potent blend of fear and resolve. The eyes of the small child sparkled with an eagerness that pierced through the tension, a reminder of the very questions Mike had been wrestling with since the loss of Ethan. Would his father react with the walls of stoicism that had characterized their interactions for so long? Or could this be a catalyst for openness? With the boy standing as a hopeful interloper, Mike took a breath, his voice steady. "You know, when I think about becoming rich, it's not just about money. It's about the warmth of connection, the love we share, and the dreams we pursue together." He glanced at the child, whose innocent question echoed an unspoken ache within himself, something he yearned to address with his father. His father's expression softened, a fleeting crack in his stoic demeanor. "But what's the point of dreaming when life keeps throwing obstacles in the way?" "That's the very point," Mike countered, urgent, pouring his heart out in that small cafe, where the scent of coffee hung heavy in the air. "Dreams are what shape us. They bind the past with the present, creating a road toward a brighter future. Together we can redefine every scar into an opportunity." The little boy's gaze shifted between Mike and his father, as if gauging which narrative would unfold next. Was it too much to hope that this moment, triggered by a child's innocent curiosity, would empower a breakthrough? "Richness comes from connection, from love," Mike continued. "Do we want to be defined by what we lost, or can we also celebrate what is still ahead of us? The stories left to be written?" His father faltered, the rigid facade slowly abating. "Is it truly that simple?" "It is if we choose it to be," Mike stated, his voice now a whisper edged with hope. "What if we committed to journeying together, unearthing those dreams long hidden beneath layers of grief? What if we chose to share those moments with each other instead of burying them alive?" For a heartbeat, Mike's father searched his son's eyes, grappling with the possibility of relinquishing his guardedness. The boy beside them, oblivious to the weight of the moment, bounced on his small feet, filled with the zeal of possibility. "What if," Mike pressed gently, "we began to work on dreaming together, starting with something simple?" He laid it out for his father, to explore what joy and legacy could mean for both of us. The cafe buzzed around them, but in that pocket of time, everything melted away, the world reducing to the two of them, and the child who held the space of innocence. His father's shoulders relaxed, the shadow of doubt beginning to lift. "I've spent so long suppressing everything. I don't know if I can." But for the first time, there was less defiance in his tone, more vulnerability, a concession perhaps, that there was value in forging a new chapter. "Let's start small. Share one thing from your past that you've suppressed. Allow me into your world." Mike felt courage swelling within him. He wanted to create a safe space between them, one that didn't carry the weight of expectation or judgment. A pause enveloped them like a thick fog, but beneath the stillness, Mike sensed tentative progress. His father's gaze drifted to the little boy, still waiting expectantly, as if the child understood the gravity of the moment. "Okay," his father finally replied, the weight of his voice colliding with the still air. "Maybe I can try that, just this once." With those words, a thread of tension loosened, and Mike felt a sincere desire to connect brewing between them. "It's a beginning," he said softly, feeling a flicker of hope igniting between them. The little boy grinned, delighted by the sudden warmth that enveloped their corner of the cafe. "You can write stories together," he exclaimed, clapping as if casting a spell over the moment. "Yes, we can," Mike said, enthusiasm weaving a thread of reality within the fabric of their shared experience. As they settled back into the rhythm of conversation, something profound transformed beneath the surface. Layers of unspoken emotion began to peel away, revealing pathways to rediscover what had long been frozen. Mike sensed his father's openness, the gradual unearthing of dreams, regrets, and the fears that had silenced their connection for too long. As the sun dipped lower outside the window, pouring a warm glow into the cafe, Mike felt an anchoring resolve rising within him, an almost palpable shift. The determination to navigate pain had provided fertile ground for vision, and it felt right. "Let's write together about grief, love, and even the laughter," he said, feeling a sense of freedom in asserting his hopes. "Stories that celebrate everything we've experienced." In that pivotal moment, a commitment settled between father and son, strengthened by the presence of an innocent observer. Clearly the journey wasn't yet complete, but they had opened the door, just a crack, that could lead to a new beginning. In reclaiming their connection, Mike realized he had also started shaping his own narrative, one where dreams intertwined with reality, where vulnerability became a bridge leading from loss toward discovery. He would emerge from this exchange not only as a son, but as an author of his own life, ready to face the future. With each subsequent word, each shared story, they would become more than the sum of their grief. They would redefine what it meant to be a family, together embracing the extraordinary in the ordinary. This moment ignited a new chapter, one Mike would write not just for himself, but for the son he had lost, his essence breathing life into every word designed to honor dreams once abandoned and dreams yet to realize. The journey ahead glittered with promise, and as Mike exchanged glances with his father, an understanding bridged them anew, no longer lost in silence, but actively shaping their legacies with intention. From this day forth, Mike would conquer the shadows of the past while reveling in the richness of the journey they were about to embark on together. Things would evolve. Together they would learn, support each other, and redefine their story. The road ahead, though lined with uncertainty, glimmered brightly, a canvas waiting for vibrant strokes of love, resilience, and endless possibility. As they journeyed together, they would embrace not only the path but the very essence of connection, allowing healing to spread its roots wide and deep. And now, to all of you watching, this chapter may have reached its closure, but remember, transformation begins with conscious choices and the willingness to embrace vulnerability. You need to subscribe now to follow Mike's journey of writing, healing, and storytelling, for there are more emotional stories ahead. Leave a like now. To feed the algorithm, your support matters. Comment below with your reactions or theories. Let's spark a conversation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, we can foster a community of shared stories and resilience.